Namaste, friends, and welcome to this special episode of Amazing Vedas with Dr. Parikshit Singh. Thank you, Dr. Singh, for joining us. And as you know, on Sunday, the 21st of June, is the International Day of Yoga. So we're going to record a couple of special episodes of Amazing Vedas to talk about yoga and to see how yoga is either prefigured in the Vedas, or maybe it's not. Who knows? Let's discuss it and find out. But certainly, it figures very prominently in the Bhagavad Gita, even though it's not Patanjali's yoga. So, and then, we follow Sri Aurobindo in his interpretation, or at least the key to understanding the Veda and also the Gita, I might add, right? And he has come up with this idea of integral yoga. So there's so much to talk about today. But just as a background, in 2014, the UN General Council, the General Assembly of the United Nations, approved by more than 175 nations voting in favor this concept, this idea of the International Day of Yoga, and they decided on 21st of June because it's the solstice, it's the longest day of the year, and it's a wonderful, I think, day to commemorate yoga, which is practiced everywhere. So what I want to say is that it has been universally accepted, and in the U.S., I'm happy to say the U.S. is the number one nation in the world that practices yoga. It's almost 10% of the population of United States, which makes it more than 30 million people are doing yoga every day, possibly even more than India, though yoga in the broadest sense, as Sri Aurobindo said, all life is yoga. I want to add just a little personal note here. My teacher in St. Stephen's College, his name is Mr. Ashok Mukherjee, and after teaching for a little while in St. Stephen's, he was selected or joined the IFS. He had already written the exam, the Indian Foreign Service, and he was India's permanent representative at the United Nations in 2014. So when Prime Minister Modi became the Prime Minister of India, which was that summer, he gave him this job to do, that please see if we can get this day announced and approved by the United States General Assembly. And lo and behold, I mean, PM Modi made a speech in September, if I remember, of 2014, proposing this. And by December, they were voting on this resolution, and it was passed, as you can remember, Dr. Singh, by over 175 countries. So I think the International Day of Yoga makes us all proud. We are all yogis. Sri Aurobindo says all life is yoga. So even if you don't practice asanas, you're still a yogi. So with those words, Dr. Singh, perhaps you can set the context by giving us a couple of passages from the Veda, on yoga. Of course, I want to say just one little thing about this before I invite you to read the tweet, which is that you see in the Vedas, yoga is treated a little differently. It basically means usually yoking the chariots, going to battle. You know, I remember, I think you tweeted this, Rig Veda 1:18:7, where that's one passage that really makes you think. Sadhinam yogam invati. Wow, invoking Brahmanaspati. He promotes yoga of thought or insight, dhinam, you know. But there is another thing. See, we all love poetry, and there is a hymn where actually yoga refers to chandas, yoking the meters together. I think the poet says, Kash chandasam yogam aveda dhiraha, something like that. Who being wise know yoga of the meters, chandasam. This is we last mandala, 10th mandala, 114.9. But we will, and one more thing, we've talked a lot about Indra here, and there's a wonderful hymn, Yoge Yoge Tavastaram Vaje Vaje Hava Mahe. Wow, Vaje Vaje Hava Mahe. in every yoga, in every contest, you see, Vaje, Vaje, we invoke Indra, you see, to be our friend, So let us invoke Indra, Dr. Singh, to help us navigate this connection between the yoga of the Vedas, the yoga of the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads, the yoga of Patanjali, and ultimately the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo. So it's a series of topics we want to pick up, but we'll start with the Veda.
So, shall I start with the tweet first, and then that may give you a little perspective?
Yes,
Then
sir.
we can
Yes.
we can even read the shloka and see what that says. But as you know, I've started on a journey from the beginning of the Rig Veda, and step by step, maybe Rik by Rik, I'm trying to give the literary flavor of the Rig Veda. Obviously, you cannot exhaust it. Every time I think it's time to move on, I take a step back, forward, and I take a step back. And I find, oh my God, I missed this. Oh, this connects with this. And it's very spirally form in its structure, vortex. It goes forward, goes back, it just connects constantly. It's very recursive. But I found this word yoga, I think it is the first instance of the mention of the word yoga in the Rig Veda. So I was happy, because there's often people say yoga is a later development. So I tried to write this and without making any claims, because I don't think those are necessary. This is the tweet. The first mention of the word yoga appears in Rig Veda in the Rik 1.5.3. That is Mandala 1, Sukta 5, Rik 3. Yoga in the Veda means reaching out for union with other forces or beings or realities. It's also a method of attainment of the goal, ideal, or the cosmic power. And as you know, the goal for the rishi is immortality or light or truth. The word essentially still means the same. Any yogic effort we make connects us to this tradition that is more than 4,000 years at least, more likely 7,000 to 11,000 years. That makes it perhaps the oldest living dynamic tradition of humanity. Perhaps. Whether it gets expressed now as Vedanta or Tantra or Bhakti or Karma Yoga, it is the same continuous revelation and human aspiration. Quite remarkable, isn't it? So I put a poser before everyone. But this is the Rik, and I will just read the first two padas. Sagha no yoga abhuvatsa raye sapuradhyama. So you see, Sagha no yoga. And again, it's an aspirational hymn to Indra. And again, it's a means to unite. And Raye is not just anna or food, but Raye also is prosperity. And Rayi is a word, Radha often is a word that is used through our tradition. Rayi means riches. So this is the first mention, and that's why I just wanted to put it out there. The meaning here is probably not the way we understand it today, but that's okay. The meaning was to connect and become one with that power. And as you know, Indra is the power within each of us, the highest intelligence. So to connect and then accomplish, get the riches of life. The Vedic rishis were conquerors. They were not ascetics or mendicants. They considered this life, this place, the physical, the mental, the emotional, as a fit place to be in for the consciousness, and a place to fight for the truth, to establish the truth, to bring it down, and to become immortal. That was their aspiration while living here. So it's a pretty dynamic, I would say almost a warrior-like mentality, and that's where the first yoga comes. And yoga, yoke is a word that is in English, we use it, and it's the same root, which is yuj. Yuj is to join, to connect. Later it became yoga means to add. And as we have discussed in the past, it's somehow also connected to the word yaja, which means to worship, to offer oneself, and even to perform the sacrifice, or what is called the yajna. So it's interesting how these words are connected. But the interesting thing that Sri Krishna does in the Gita is connects yoga to yudh. Yudh is to fight. But it's very interesting, and I always have taken the later developments and I've kind of done an imposition on the original ones, adhyasa sort of, to see if this yudh, this battle, was also an original sense in which the word yoga was used. It's only a theory. I'm not claiming that that's the way it is. It's just a concept.
Totally, totally. In fact, as we've gone on this journey, Dr. Singh, so many things seem to have opened up to us. And I want to tell our viewers that one of the beautiful things about the Sanatana tradition is that exegesis is not an end-stopped process. It's ever opening. The mandala itself opens on all four sides, though it has a core. So while you were reading out this, 153, something blew my mind. So let me also read the hymn, and then I want to ask you a question. Sa gha no yoga abhuvat sa raye sa purandhyam. So far so good. He's invoking Indra, and it's for battle. But listen to this. This is of course by the great Madhuchandas, but Gamad vaje bhir asana. Asana. Can you imagine that? Asana itself, asana. It appears in 153.
Yes.
Yogasana. Now, of course, Sandhi, we are joining it into asana, but in other words, what I'm trying to suggest is every asana is also an aspiration. Asana.
Yes. Yes.
So the rishi is saying, may he Indra become united with us
That's right.
in yoga. Isn't that Indra, our Indriyas? You see, all our
Yes.
senses, we want them under control. May he come for wealth, for abundant thought, insight, antarang, whatever now they talk about, vinyasa and all that. May he come to us with plenitudes of victory. You talked about yuddha.
Yes.
So the rishis, as well as the ancient warriors of the Aryas are not modern, Aryans and Nazis, please. Please, let's not, let's not mix these Aryas are the noble ones. It has nothing to do with race. You can be any race, any color, any ethnicity. If you're a noble person, if you follow the highest values, according to the Vedic tradition, you're an Arya. So, they were fighters. By fighters, I mean they were not quarreling in a silly way. They were not, cantankerous in that sense, but they were great warriors for truth, for light, for justice, right? And for consciousness, for higher consciousness. So the thread that we are trying to suggest, going back to the Vedas and from the Vedas to the present day, is the battle of the human being, the aspiration of the human species for higher consciousness here and now, and that sense of feeling the limitlessness, of who we are, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Really, I'm glad you found that, because in the Veda, Sandhi is not used so frequently, and that's why if you see the Padapatha, they actually consciously broke the words down and memorized them forward, backward, sideways, in different patterns. So we would always keep the root, the dhatus alive. And probably one of the greatest innovations uh, so early on, that we could memorize this and not forget. And so I think it's a very should we say, metonymic, that yoga and asana is right there, but asana could have a deeper etymology, which is probably what it is, what asana means. I've never heard it put this way, to tell you the
See,
truth,
I
but
tell
it's
you, these things are coming to me even as we are on this. Last time, also, I made a point about Krishna, the eighth child, and Martanda. So these things are just coming. So we are
yes,
on to something. And, let's not forget that Madhuchandas, the rishi, he belongs to the family of Vishwamitra.
yes,
He's a Vaishwamitra. And these are the fighters, the Vishwamitra, the great rishi who gave us the Gayatri. And what does he say? Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yona Prachodayat. So,
right,
you have to propel yourself energetically,
yes.
through the three realms of the Bhu, Bhua, and Swa to reach the higher realms. So, which is what I was going to ask you in the next episode of our conversation today about yoga and Agni. So, I want some concluding comments on you for this particular episode, and then we will come back.
So this is what I would say, I wouldn't say problem, but this is the challenge, or this is the beauty of the Veda. You discover so much, and it's there are, of course, two ways, as you know, hermeneutics, two ways to doing it, which is where we are right now. From the present knowledge, we go back and look at it. As your friend, I think what was his, Gadamer, said, that there is no way you can be impartial. You have to use what you have learned and be aware of the bias that has been brought on with the later developments, and that's totally okay. The only other way one can think of is try to go to the roots and the sounds of those words, and let them create their own impression, and let them interconnect, and try to be in that awareness, and just soak the awareness that the rishis had, without having any agenda, without having any purpose, or using our brains. And then you will see, it's almost like a kaleidoscope, is how I see it. So many things come together, because remember, these are sounds being played with, and sounds create their meanings as they are moving constantly, almost in a, as I said, a kaleidoscopic manner. And it really is the biggest, most beautiful opportunity, and the biggest challenge of the Veda, because it constantly changes. It's no longer the same Veda I read yesterday. After you have told me, it's the meaning has changed. Now I have to go back and start seeing afresh the whole thing, which is so gorgeous, so beautiful.
I completely agree. Let's take your advice to heart, and let's end this episode with Vaje Bhir Asana. Thank you, viewers. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Support us in this endeavor. Follow us on X or Twitter. Amazing Vedas is the handle, and see you soon. Thank you, Dr. Singh. Namaste.